Hello Vinaka, Namaste and good evening. I'm Vijay Narayan. You're watching Fiji Village Street Talk. Another contentious issue this week. This one is in relation to the University of the South Pacific. In studio tonight, we have two former presidents of the Association of the University of the South Pacific, Elizabeth Fong, who used to be the president of the Association of USP staff until December last year, and Dr. Tamara Osborne-Naikatini, who is now a former president of the Association of USP staff, just days after she lost a job. Her contract was terminated, and we'll talk about that in detail. This show is about accountability and transparency. We also contacted the Vice Chancellor of the USP, Professor Pal Aluwalia. He said that he could not come to the show as they do not discuss issues publicly in relation to personnel issues. But the show must go on, and these are important issues. USP, a very important institution for us. Millions of taxpayers' money are given to USP by the government in every budget. Of course, it had stopped for some time. We'll be talking about that and the impacts that has had. But what do we do in terms of our institution and the issues surrounding it? The show is focusing on the university's operations, the expectations of the staff, and of course the students. Thank you very much for sending in your questions. A lot of questions also came through from the students of USP and interested stakeholders. Now, from the staff union's perspective, Elizabeth, please highlight your issues of concern when you were there. You had turbulent times back then when you were the president of the Association of USP staff.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for inviting us to this discussion. There were a number of issues that had grown over the years. These were issues that were brought up through various committees within the university, namely the Staff Policy Committee, on which the union sits. And there was the quarterly meetings with the senior management team. So there were two main opportunities, apart from other committees, when we could raise our issues. Now, these issues began to come through when vacant positions were not being filled. Came to the point where the Vice Chancellor reported to Senate there were 400 vacancies. This was of great concern. It was affecting the workloads of people, their physical and mental health. This is coming out of COVID. So there was a lot of pressure on the staff. So the questions kept getting asked, why aren't we advertising and filling positions? At that time, the Fiji government was not meeting its contribution. Nevertheless, from those 400 positions, there was money being saved. So over a period of time, there was money accumulating to be able to fill at least some of the positions, even if they filled 200. So that was an issue that kept coming up. The other issue of great concern was the lack of promotion of regional academics and professionals. We were losing those persons with great potential to Australia and New Zealand. We have a number of Fiji staff, regional staff, who were being taken by Australian universities. They were at lecturer level here. They were offered senior lecturer positions there. There were senior lecturers here offered associate professor, but we weren't, the committees of the university weren't seeing their value and raising this. So that became a very important issue. The other one was the gender balance. Women, the part of the charter which says promote regionals to build regional capacity also includes women being promoted. We were losing women also, or the promotions were not being balanced to take that into account. Now, we're not talking about compromising quality or standards, but we were saying there are certain things, like women in politics. You've got to do things to encourage more and to enable. We weren't, the Vice Chancellor and management weren't creating an enabling environment. So this came up. So there were quite a few issues that were across the university dealing with staff. And we were no longer viewed as an employer of choice, which we were.
We'll talk a bit more about that in detail now. Dr. Naikatini, you have recently been the head of the union after Elizabeth finished off last year. And what were some of the issues that you were grappling with after December last year?
The log of claims. So we were dealing with the remaining issues that had not yet been agreed to. So our log of claims and the issues that the union had and that the members had raised had been more or less endorsed by management, but we still didn't have a signed document. So when Elizabeth left, our very first meeting with the union, we have quarterly meetings, involved getting that log of claims signed. It was also an important submission to be made when we filed for strike, because the most important issue was that of salary. We were seeking an increase to cover the cost of living adjustments that needed to be compensated for the 2 trienniums preceding this year, all the way back from 2019. That was a long-standing issue that had arisen with management over the last, I think, 3 years at least. You know, it gone back and forth for a long time. So what we had to actually do was to call for strike in order to get management to sit down with us, to sit down with both unions to discuss salary increases, which is what proceeded in the first quarter of this year.
You had concerns when you were there in relation to salaries as well?
Yes, that underpinned everything that was being done, the salary increase. And there was this delay. We could have signed. In fact, I signed before I left the log of claims, but the management had not signed. So when I left, it nullified that signing. And so Tamara and company had to re-sign again. Prior to that, in that period of the first triennium, 2019 to 2021, the union signed a memorandum of agreement with the university. We recognized the difficulties the university was facing in COVID, and we agreed to defer any salary adjustments and discussions to the next triennium. So when that triennium came through, we pushed for the salary adjustments, but it took a whole triennium. And that December, before we could get anything, it was after I left. So Tamara had to re-sign it with the General Secretary because management kept delaying that signing, saying we're out of the country and that. So, yes, so it took that. But the vote to strike actually was taken by the 2 unions in their AGMs.
I'll ask you both in relation to, of course, during that time too, when the previous government stated clearly that they will not be releasing grants to USP. Was there a suggestion that because millions of dollars were not coming through from the Fijian government, it was also having an impact, a financial impact on the university?
Yes, that was recognized by everybody. So that's why we did not push for any. We gave up increments for performance. We gave up all of that. Anything to do with money, we gave up for those 3 years. When we saw that things that accumulated some funds from the savings of vacant positions, we started to talk. We were happy to talk in good faith. The rewards that were given by the management, the 2%, were not discussed with us. So we didn't see that as good faith, and we thought we were worth more than the 2%. We looked at RBF inflation rates, and it was 3%. So we were willing to go to negotiation and talk, but they did not come forward in the manner that we expected through a collective bargaining and good faith process.
The people watching this tonight will be asking, okay, you two are former presidents of the Association of USP Staff. Did you do enough to ensure that there was cordial discussions from your end, Elizabeth?
Yes, I did 2 years. 2 years of going round and round and back and forth to staff policy. Staff policies go to SMT, senior management, go to SMT. They refer us back to the committees. I think the unions, if you track exactly what we did, will find that we listened, we understood the situation, we were fair to the university in that.
Yeah, we gave up a lot, and the impact of that was felt by our students because we chose to agree to what the university asks of us, which is to cut costs, including travel costs. we had to find innovative ways to teach our students in the outer campuses without being able to actually travel there. So, I mean, there's an impact on a teacher when they know that they can't actually physically go to teach their students. There were a lot of sacrifices made, not just financially. There were issues that arose over the last 3 years that were brought up at quarterly meetings. And so we met with the senior management team quite frequently and shared these issues, and they sort of compounded, rolled over.
And the senior management was listening? Were they giving you time to listen to your issues?
Well, during the meetings.
But even then, getting the meetings to happen on a quarterly basis was a little challenging when they defer it, and then things would pile up and you're almost into the second quarter meeting before you've had the first one. So we were given a bit of a runaround.
Yeah.
But we pushed. We kept pushing. We didn't stop asking.
Now, issues, of course, I'll take you back a bit. There, we talked about the Fijian government grant. There were also issues during the deportation of the Vice-Chancellor and his wife. And a lot of questions have come in. The same people who are defending the Vice-Chancellor publicly, what has gone wrong and why were you doing that back then?
Okay. Like the rest of us, he is a worker. We saw this from a governance perspective and the rights of a worker.
Are you talking about the Vice-Chancellor?
Yes, Pala Lualia. He is a worker, and the way he was being treated was unjust and unfair. So we stood together under good governance principles for him as a worker. And that is why we did what we did. Later, when anyone who's deported goes through a lot of psychological, emotional issues, we believe, and that's unfair, and we would not have liked to have seen that happen to anybody else. So we stood for him. He went and he came back. When he came back and we started talking about all these issues of salary increase, regional appointments, etc., we felt that he was not on the same page that we were on prior to that. So we started to ask the hard questions and push until we came to a point where we recognized that we were talking at cross purposes. And so that led us to take the stand for all the workers that were our members. We stood for him as a worker. It was time to stand for our staff who'd carried heavy loads, felt it mentally, felt it physically. People were leaving, loads were increasing. So we stood for him as a worker. Then it was time to stand for ours when he wasn't quite coming to the table.
So Elizabeth, you talked about 400 vacancies. This year, did things change? Were positions being filled? Did that number go down?
There was an apparent move to fill positions. However, I can only speak from my school. Not many of these positions have actually been filled.
What school is that?
The School of Agriculture, it's a bit of a mouthful. School of Agriculture, Geography, Environment, Oceans and Natural Sciences. We had a very small pot to fill those vacancies with. Schools were only given a very small amount of money in relation to what they actually needed to fill those positions. And so a lot of those courses were being taught by consultants rather than filling the full-term permanent positions. It was a stopgap measure, and it hasn't really resolved the vacancy issue at all. That's from my school's perspective.
The period of time it takes to fill an academic position, especially if it's an expatriate, takes 6 months to get a work permit.
Minimum.
The work permit issue is very challenging. And so I see a lot more advertisements in the newspaper, but I know from experience that to fill them, you're not going to get anything until, if you advertise in Jan, Feb, and you go through the internal processes, you're not going to have anybody in for at least another 6 months, maybe September, October. So what happens in the meantime?
How does this affect the students?
Well, in 2 ways. They're being taught by someone who's not a permanent staff member, who's a consultant, which means that the consultant is only there for the classes. They're not mandated to sit in offices and wait around for students to drop in, opportunistic discussions about their coursework. So they miss out on that particular interaction. They also, as consultants, only work within their contracted period. So the schools and the disciplines cannot go back to them afterwards for reconsideration of grades and other administrative matters relating to the course that they've just taught. It affects the students in a number of ways.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
That sounds right. Okay, I got it. If I could turn back time, if I could find a way.
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. Sick and tired of hearing all these people talk about what's the deal with this pop life and when is it gonna fade out?
The sun is fading away.
If I could reach the stars,
Bum, 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 bum. I don't know the rest of the words.
I'd give them all to you.
As the June light turns to moonlight.
La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la la la. Loving you is all I ever need. Making love with you is all good.
I take back those words that hurt you, and you'd stay.
Breakfast with Budana Penny and Tifa. Good yanders.
It's 21 past 7 and it's Turned Up Tuesday. Turn up.
Good youngers, let's go. Hey! Hi! We just wanted to take this moment to say a big binakawakalu.
For making us the #1 radio station in Fiji.
Your sport is the world to us.
Thank you for listening in day after day.
I like listening to Breakfast on FM 96. I love all the songs that they play, and FM 96 is one.
We love FM 96.
FM 96.
Our number one.
One thing that draws me to FM 96 is that the content is relatable. They do play all the music that I love.
Part of FM 96 is listening to Penny the Pensaris. And they make fun about my small head because it sings better than they can tell.
And you have made us a part of your daily routine.
And we couldn't be more grateful.
Thank you for making us #1 in Fiji!
क्या आप भी परेशान हैं? क्या आपकी भी लाइफ में ऐसी ही टेंशन है? आपकी परेशानी को कम करने के लिए आ रहा हूं मैं बहुत ही जल्द आपको हंसाने के लिए। रेडियो सरगम और रेडियो सरगम फेसबुक पेज पर बहुत ही जल्द वहीं पर मिलेंगे। हेलो, अरे यार,
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guests tonight, two former presidents of the Association of the USP Staff, Elizabeth Fong and Dr. Tamara Osborne-Naikatini. Now, question for both of you. We talked about salaries, and of course, it became a real issue for the staff, as you said, and your union members. Starting with you, Elizabeth, you were at the helm at the time when you said 2% was being offered. You looked at Reserve Bank, cost of living 3%, and the 2% was offered without discussion, you say?
Was given without discussion. We had no choice. Offer means there's time to talk. No, we were
So
just
no
told.
discussion at all?
No discussion. Just told you're getting 2%. And we're like, I beg your pardon, we thought we were going to have a discussion on this. We had done our homework to come to the table when the discussion would happen. I think the first 2% came in October 2022.
Yes.
And that's when we start to say, no, we need to talk. And we had done a lot of talking before that, a lot of talking. So when it came to that, and there was no move on the 2%, but I did have a conversation with the Vice Chancellor on that occasion, and I said, we were going to ask for 4%. Can you go back to the Finance Resource Committee and tell them, we need to talk, you've given us 2, we want 4. He said, how about we give you 2 now and another 2 in January, none of which was backdated. So on that discussion, it was, okay, we'll get 4% that way, then we talk. We were hoping to have discussions after the Fiji government budget in June 2023. But within a day of the budget, we got told we're getting another 2%. So all that build up to negotiating in good faith and having the discussion didn't happen.
So you got a 2%.
Yeah.
You were given a 2%.
Given a 2%.
You're given another 2%. You said you wanted 4%. So how much did you really want?
We wanted over the 5 years 3%
per year
each year. Yes.
So 15% in total.
That was the way we were going to go. Yes.
So you wanted 15% pay rise in total, backdated or going forward?
We were hoping to backdate it for a certain period, but that was open to negotiation. We were willing to listen to.
So now you have 4%.
We have 4%.
And you happy with 4%?
There was an additional 2%.
So we got another 2%.
You got another 2%.
Year.
So you now have 6%.
Yep.
Yes.
But it's
But
1% short of
1% short
of what would have been the average cost of living or inflation for that entire period.
So you now want 7% instead of 6%.
We had asked.
You had asked.
Had asked for 9%.
You had asked for 9%. So
That's
from
correct.
15 we went down to 9%.
Right.
Did you get?
They weren't willing to talk salary increase.
They didn't want to talk.
No.
When we came to the log of claims, everything else was discussed in the log of claims, but they refused to budge on salary.
Did they give a reason?
They said financial issues. However, when we submitted a paper to the May 2023 Council on this, our General Secretary is an accountant by profession. She identified the 100 million unencumbered cash showing in the accounts. She also showed, and our demand for the 15% was based on the fact that $14 million was saved in salaries from the vacant positions. So using a portion of that to give everybody what we were wanting would have come to around 10 to 11 million. So we were negotiating from that perspective. That was out. You've saved the money. It's not coming from elsewhere. It's what you've saved from vacant positions. Now you give back to the staff who have held the university together with management through those years. There wasn't an unfair demand.
Did the management say that we need the money for other purposes, maybe in terms of facilities, in terms of other things?
We kept getting told all kinds of things. We had a staff consultation, and what was presented to us was not what we were aware, what we understood in terms of the finances. So we were at different ends of the scale.
What was presented to you?
We were told the university needed to use the money for this reason or for that reason.
What
we were
reason?
potentially still facing what would be a predicted drop. Last year, they predicted a 30% drop in student enrollment. And at the beginning of this year, we didn't see that 30% drop. So we went into negotiations, we went into discussions at first, before negotiations, discussions with the management, knowing that we haven't seen that predicted drop. So their predicted forecast of a drop in student enrollments and therefore drop in student fees wasn't quite applicable. Therefore, there is money. Can we talk about how we could use that money to reward the staff who've worked throughout that period, to actually, raise their morale? There were some very unhappy staff members.
You have people leaving?
We have people leaving. We have people leaving because they see the environment at USB is not conducive to a happy work environment. It's not a happy work environment. They feel overloaded with work that they shouldn't have to do. They're not being recognized when it comes to staff review processes. So there's a whole lot of issues. And then you have the people who rightfully should be given promotions. You know, they need to progress in their careers, but they're being blocked for various reasons.
Now, my understanding is you're still unhappy with the pay, that the salary increments that have been given. You're saying you want 9%.
We did want 9%. When the university management met with us, they told us that the university has to have, it's called the University Grants Committee. And the suggestion there was that because different island nations are facing their own economic issues, that the different member countries may not give as much their donations, their grant money. So we decided to backtrack and say, okay, we recognize that the hardship that the management will be going through to try and meet everybody's demands. So we decided, okay, we won't talk about salary increase just yet. We'll talk about rewarding the staff for the period of time that they've been through to adjust for the inflation that they faced and the hardships they faced. We decided to talk about only a backdated payment, a back pay.
So instead of a further increase, now a backdating.
Yes, and that was what we agreed to.
So was that fulfilled?
That has been fulfilled.
And you're happy with that?
The staff are generally happy. There's some issues because we're talking about different people of different staffing levels. So if you consider that a cleaner might get only 12,000 a year, what he or she would have gotten in back pay would be much smaller than what, say, someone in senior management might have gotten in back pay.
It wasn't a sliding scale.
It wasn't a sliding
It was
scale.
A flat scale.
It was a flat. Having said that, the two new unions negotiated together for this back pay. So we negotiated with the INJ union, USPSU. They got a slightly larger increase, in which we recognize because their pay grades are smaller than the academics are.
So my question is, now that you've come to sort of like an agreement in relation to the back pay and the pay increments, although you are not fully satisfied that what you wanted wasn't fulfilled, but you've agreed that, okay, based on requirements, are there other issues that concern you? Why I'm asking, because it seems like people who have been sending what is going on? It seems like there's trouble at USP.
Oh, there is.
If I can just interject here on that back pay of salary, it was only given to those who are currently employed. I declare my interest. I retired in December, but I was there for the period 2019 to 2023, as were a whole lot of other people who retired under the USP retirement policy. There were those who resigned.
So what's the USP retirement policy?
65 years of age for senior staff and 63 for what we call intermediate junior admin staff. So in light of that, those of us who left, who were part of this whole negotiation, were not entitled under USP policy to receive any of the back pay. However, if you look at the ILO conventions, C100, which is on equal remuneration, this should take into account those who were there for services rendered. So the university, in its policy of saying it's only for current people, is actually contravening ILO Convention C100 on equal remuneration. Everybody got paid, should have received that. And
everyone
then there's
who was working at the time.
Yes, everyone. If you
payroll.
work from 2019 to 2021, you should be rewarded for that period. If you were there 2019 to 2022, you should get something. And there's also ILO Convention C111, which is on discrimination, employment and occupation. So the university might have its policies, but Fiji has ratified these conventions. And it's time to look at the policy. You can have a policy, but you've got to see it in the bigger light. So I'm declaring my interest as someone, but there are people who've resigned.
Have you raised this issue with the...
Yes, this issue has been raised with the university, and they have come back to say, sorry, it's only for those, according to the current policy, that current staff will receive it. And this actually came from the Finance and Resource Committee's recommendation to the Executive Committee of Council, which was needed to finally approve the back pay.
Some questions have come through that these unionists are just causing trouble. They are troublemakers. What do you have to say to that?
I think it's the job of a union member to stand up and talk. And if when you talk, you're perceived as a troublemaker, I think that perception is the eye of the beholder rather than there being any actual truth of the matter. If a union leader does not speak on behalf of the union members, that really just makes it a, what's the point of the union? What is the point of electing union leadership? You have members who cannot speak. They elect members who then speak on their behalf. And if the feeling or the current or the sentiment that's running in the union membership is that they're unhappy about something, then that's what the union leaders have to talk about.
Elizabeth?
Unions are about justice. Justice for workers, for their members, and they have an obligation to stand up for their members, and that is what we have done. And I think unions worldwide, employers, if you don't have unions, that leads to employers manipulating workers. And that's how you end up with workers being underpaid, poor working conditions, discriminated against. So the unions have a responsibility to prevent this kind of injustice for their workers, and we're passionate about it, passionate about justice and good governance. You fall in with the union, and those who've been following us, watching us, have been grateful, I think, for what the unions have done. When we stood outside the council and shared our thoughts on the way that whole process went that Tamara was involved in, the staff stood together. And they were grateful. Without the union, that could not have taken place.
A question in relation to the talking. Did you go to the negotiation table? Did you talk? Do you believe you did enough?
We talked and we talked and we talked. We did not want this to become a public issue. USP is in the news for the wrong reasons. We should be in the news on our achievements as an academic institution. Instead, here we are trying to rectify things that, there's some things you keep in-house within the family. We tried to do that, to keep it within. But when within did not come to the table, as we wish, we'll talk about the logger claims, no salary. It was like that. So we went through all that. The salary, can we, we did. They just would not talk. We provided the evidence as we had. I think sometimes they didn't understand it, but that was their role to go and find out. However, we did all the talking we could, and we wanted to avoid this. That's why we kept going, even to the point where I left the university. I was hoping it would have been concluded before I left, but no, it continued.
But Tamara, when you came in, do you think that you talked enough, sat at the negotiation table?
I think we did. We had our first meeting with the VC president, and then we continued on the negotiation table for the salaries, for the salary adjustment, and then the back pay. We met a number of times. The meetings were conducted in what we call good faith. There was camaraderie, there was understanding, there was collegial discussions, and I think it seemed that the SMT members that we were meeting with and the union leadership, the two unions, they were seeing eye to eye towards the end. It felt like we were, sort of balancing or restoring that trust relationship between the unions and the management. At least making the steps or taking the steps necessary.
A lot of questions have come through, and they know that the Association of USP staff will be here, who have been the recent past presidents, and these are mainly students. They are saying, we just want a university where the staff teaching and we get the best services. What's your message to them?
You're paying for our services. You deserve the best services that the university can render to you. And those best services are predicated on sound decision making that ensures that the services that are provided to our students have their best interests in heart. And that includes, I think, first and foremost, that we represent gender equality in our teaching team, that the students see that we have both females and males amongst the teaching staff. In addition to that, this is the University of the South Pacific. We need regional staff on there. We need regional staff not just teaching courses, but regional staff making decisions. I think that's incredibly important. And I speak as somebody who's gone through the entire university system, from a student to a postgrad student to a PhD student and then to a staff member. If I didn't see anyone who was a regional member, it would have made, I think, my learning journey a little bit more different. So I think it's very important.
Elizabeth?
Our students want to be taught by some of their own. We bring a certain perspective to teaching as regionals. So I think that's an important factor to consider. The students have always been our focus. That is why we talked so long for 2 years. We talked and we talked because we didn't want negative impact on the students. But there comes to a point where you've got to take another step. And a lot of students supported us. If you know about, we talked with them before voting and that kind of thing. So we knew exactly where they stood, and they stood with us in terms of this whole battle. So the students, during COVID, we bent over backwards to make sure they got well. As the university librarian, I know what we did, and having sat on the committee that was meeting weekly during that time to make sure the students received the best that they could in a difficult situation, I'm fully aware of what everybody was doing. And those who were committed worked really, really hard. So the students have always been. By doing this, we're trying to ensure whoever's appointed is of quality. We want regionals, we want men and women. Our society is made up of men and women. You need to have both perspectives to educate, to give a good education to a student. A balanced one, a regional one, a Western perspective. It all comes together. But I have to say, through all of this, the students have been. For 5 years, the students were our focus. It was only in this period that we've realized that we needed to ensure our people got a just deal at the end of the day.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Oh my gosh! Oh, what's in the box?
You're probably wondering, what's in the box? Well, if you must know, it's actually me. Before you call the police, I'm actually an app. The all-new Fiji Village app. Here's an update. See what I did there? I gave you an update. What's new? Well, for starters, I look different. My new layout also comes with stories if you're looking for something short and sweet. I will bring you the latest news on the dot so you stay updated. You're welcome. You don't have to go anywhere for content because I bring the content to you. Not only can you listen to your favorite radio stations, you can also watch online video content. Which reminds me, do you love sports? Well, guess what? With the Fiji Village app, you can stay up to date with your favorite sports and scoreboards, no matter where you are. Your #1 news website just got better with an app. Download and get updated now.
Limas? Sabi mama na lima? Bebe, kenapa? Gol.
आप देख रहे हैं इसी संडास जो हमारे सुपरस्टार प्रश अभी आकर इस्तेमाल करेगा किसी वक्त अभी लो आ गया सुपरस्टार प्रश
Not following me again.
सर जनता जानना चाहते हैं सर अगर जनता जानना चाहते हैं सर अगर rumors true sir hopefully bye सर एक साल आप देख रहे हैं दफ्तर के स्टूडियो में हम भर चुके हैं जेसिका जी जेसिका जनता जानना चाहते हैं जेसिका जनता जानना चाहते हैं कि आप कौन सी मेकअप लगाते हैं
आज मैंने तो कोई मेकअप नहीं लगाया
लगता है लगा ले
How dare you DEA
जो आप देख रहे हैं यहाँ एसएन का गाड़ी पड़ा है काफी गर्जी है लेकिन एसएन साहब एसएन सर अमेरिका से आए हुए सर अमेरिका का जनता जानना चाहते हैं सर आप हमेशा काला चश्मा क्यों पहनते हैं सर
तो सफेद चश्मा कहाँ मिली सफेद चश्मा देखा कहीं तुम
तुक्ता काय को है
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, former presidents of the Association of the USB Staff, Elizabeth Fong and Dr. Tamara Osborne-Naikatini. Now, we have issues in relation to some matters that came out publicly where it has been said that Dr. Tamara, your contract was terminated in relation to certain breaches. Do you believe that you had breached certain ordinances of USB?
I believe that that's how it was perceived. It was perceived that I was breaching confidentiality of matters of importance, and that's why they basically said it was gross misconduct. Do I feel that me speaking to the media and sharing them with my disappointment of what I believe was a flawed process to put together the recommendation in that committee to go to council, I don't believe it constitutes gross misconduct. I was exercising my right to speak out against my unhappiness about what I felt was a lack of regionalism. You know that the letter that I received contained a photocopy of the article, and there was just one line that was highlighted. So from that one line, that's basically the evidence that I breached confidentiality. But if you have a look at that one line, it does not actually quote me. There are a lot of issues surrounding my dismissal that could be legally challenged and will potentially be legally challenged. I may not be at liberty to discuss them all, but just to answer your question, if the university feels that this particular issue surrounding the voting should be kept confidential, my question then is why? Why is it that they feel that the voting is or should be kept confidential? The voting wasn't via secret ballot, and yet it was just deemed that we should be very quiet about it. The report had already been given to council. People on council had discussed it. It had been leaked to social media. You know, there's a lot of issues, or even you could say legal loopholes, about this particular means by which the university management removed me.
It's interesting. A lot of USP reports get leaked.
The question is why? Not so much how, but why? Why do these reports, why are people leaking these reports? How are they being leaked is really a moot point. It's why.
My issue, and you've said about voting. What particular voting was this? Are you talking about this particular voting, that it shouldn't be confidential, or any types of voting?
No, I'm talking about the voting that went into the report that was then made as a recommendation by the committee to council. So that particular voting. Do I believe that any voting should be confidential? I believe that there are constitutional stipulations that allow for confidential voting. It's called secret ballots.
And if there's no secret ballot?
And if it's not a secret ballot, then, you know, it could be potentially challenged that it's not actually something that could be kept confidential.
I'll ask both of you now. You know, in terms of you are sitting on certain committees at USP, and there can be contentious issues discussed, which can be confidential. You also represent maybe different groups, maybe staff, students, etc. And your membership also would want to know what's your stand on it based on what they collectively decide. How do you deal with it?
Well, it's a matter of integrity, I do believe. If you feel something is awry or wrong, or you have an obligation to speak out. And if you're representing a group, I believe they're entitled to know and confirm for them that you voted according to their best interests. So as Tamara said, if it's not by secret ballot, it leaves it open to interpretation. But I think the biggest issue is standing up for what's right. If something is flawed and it's wrong, and in her case, in this particular case, where was it to go? The one option was in this way by her declaring how she voted. Based on the information gained by whoever, they can come to a conclusion based on knowing who the others were, what it was. But it was her responsibility, I believe, to tell the truth and see. And because it was such an important, impactful decision, she felt obliged to. I would have done the same.
Now the issue is employers have certain contracts and other documents that you sign that certain things are confidential. In this case, is there something specific that you sign that these things have to be confidential?
Did I sign sort of an agreement of non-disclosure? No, there's no such, there's no contractual signings for any committee meetings.
Do you remember, Elizabeth, anything that existed where it's clear that this is confidential, you cannot disclose information?
Not specific. If there is something like that, you should be signing a statement, non-disclosure. However, our contracts, general contracts say confidentiality will be maintained. But does confidentiality cover wrongdoings? This is where it comes in. Do we remain confidential when we know things are not right, do not appear to be right? I would not hide wrongs under confidentiality. And I don't think an academic institution should be doing that.
In terms of the unions, in terms of support or otherwise for the current Vice-Chancellor, you represented the union in the immediate past. There's no president elected after your departure just a few days ago. What is the feel of the unions? What is the feel based on what is happening?
Not the union members. The union members do not support the current leadership. In fact, the current leadership is the reason why they are particularly unhappy. They feel that the decision making by this current leadership has resulted in the way in which they feel that they're overloaded, they're underpaid, they're not valued in any way. Their voices become minimalized or marginalized. So the unions do not support the current leader. They met last week, both unions, and it was a unanimous decision to file for strike notice. It will sound like, perhaps to the general public, that the union will go to strike now, anytime that there's an issue. But I sat in that meeting, and there were a lot of angry people. The feeling is that, if this can happen to me, it could happen to anyone who speaks out. And that makes people angry. It makes people fearful that if they speak out, they will be victimized, and makes people who normally speak out quite angry. And that's essentially what has happened.
So you were saying in relation to the voting, what you were showing also was based on how the members feel.
Pretty much, yes. The members do not feel like they have any confidence in the current leadership.
Elizabeth, you did the same?
Yes, that was
you
reinforced.
You did tell people publicly about, in terms of certain things, that this is how your members feel?
Yes, they actually voted at the AGM. The AGM in September that I chaired, I was still president, we took a vote. And 96% of those present conveyed that dissatisfaction with the current leader. And the other union, when they took their vote, the USPSU, they voted 100% that they did not agree. So, you know, those are indications that all is not well at the top from the perspective of the union members. We've never had such great union collaboration and cooperation since
two
this
unions
issue.
working together.
The two unions working together, all levels of staff. And now, just point out, this is not a Lothala specific issue. In all of this, the campus directors all signed a document expressing their discontent with what is going on out in the region. So it's very much a regional issue, in case the public thinks, oh, this is all the Fiji people causing this. No, we have regional contributions in terms of
similar type of discontent which you've been talking about.
Lack of consultation, also things like that, general treatment of staff, lack of access. The campuses are in dire need of physical infrastructural development. Some things are happening now, but there were things that could have happened last year and the year before, and they kept getting told, you wait, it's coming, and things haven't happened. So the campuses, if they're listening to this, will relate very closely to what we're saying.
About course review and development, a lot of questions that there can be more that can be done in relation to course review and development. How much work is going into that apart from the infrastructure facilities?
We made a brief start. There were some discussions initially about course review and development, and then it's got stalled. There seem to be these sort of knee-jerk reactions. Management makes a decision, it's relayed to staff, there's initial discussions, but then nothing happens. So in the case of the course review, that's very important to make our curriculum effective, because we need students who are actually graduating with skills that they can apply, knowledge that they can actually use in the workplace. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get staff to sit down and you know, carry out the necessary meetings if they don't have enough time. And they don't have enough time because they're teaching more than they're supposed to be teaching. So it's sort of, you know, it's difficult to actually carry out this course review unless the university ensures that the staff have time to do that.
Because you have so many vacant positions still to be filled.
Yeah.
They're just barely trying to keep up with the
teaching,
the current teaching loads, marking loads, exam preparations, online preparations. So something falls into the cracks, and I think that is one of the areas that's fallen into the cracks.
Are you concerned about the delivery of the coursework to the students based on what's happening?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
What needs to be done immediately?
Fill those vacancies. Fill those vacancies. Ensure that staff have the time, have the mental space to actually sit down with their curriculum and to bring that content up to, you know, to what's needed. We also need the time to meet with our industry stakeholders to get some feedback from them, so we can work out, you know, where are we going, what needs to be changed. We need to have consultations with the students as well.
We have a lot of people leaving. I mean, the last time it checked was 80,000 and people continue to leave. A lot of discussions being held about the industry stakeholders and making sure people coming out of universities are work ready. Do you believe that those discussions are happening between USP and the industry stakeholders at the moment?
They should be. Whether they are across the university, I can't speak on behalf of all schools. I know, because I was discipline coordinator at the time, I know with my discipline we actually did have what we call a program advisory committee meeting. That those discussions are important to ensure that our curriculum is useful for the industry members or employers. Do we have time to implement all of that feedback? Barely. So what happens is, in December, after you've submitted your final bits of special exams and all of the bit of administrative issues, staff take whatever leave they can to just sort of, rest and recuperate, because the next semester's come just around the corner.
You have taken, after the issue came up, we did raise the issue with the Minister for Employment. And he said that you can take the matter to the Employment Ministry in relation to the termination of your contract based on alleged breach of USP ordinances. Have you taken that step?
I have. Yes, I filed what's called a grievance.
So what are you asking for?
For them to come back to the table and to rethink the decision that was made. I think essentially the reinstatement is not for me and me alone. I have students who are begging me, my postgrad students, not to walk away from USP just yet, because they had just begun. So I took on about 10, and there would have been an 11th student who are doing masters and PhD, just the beginning of the year. So they're in the early stages, and they feel very much disadvantaged now. They're looking at the rest of their PhD/master's journey, and they're wondering how that's going to play out without the person who helped put together the proposals for the actual research. So, with those people in mind, I can't really just walk away. I have to do something. Plus the union members, they have been very vocal. They see this as an attack on unionism, an attack on unions and free speech at the university. To walk away and not just do something about it would constitute, me basically saying that unionism is not going to work here.
It's a dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
That's being set.
So you're claiming for unfair dismissal?
I agree. I filed my grievance for unfair dismissal, yes.
And you want USP to come to the table to talk again?
Yes.
Have they said anything?
The Ministry of Labour sets the mediation. So the Ministry of Labour have then set a mediation date.
Are you planning to take court action as well?
If it will need to go to court, I think we will probably cross that bridge when it comes to it.
Yes, and I'm aware that, I think Tamara is aware that when she was dismissed, the unions took the step to write to the Vice Chancellor and give him, I think, 3 or 4 days to reconsider his decision.
So the unions had written?
Yes, they did after that, to say, please rethink, reconsider. Taking into account the needs of students. The unions are being asked all the time, what about the students? In this particular case, the thought occurred to me, did they think about Tamara's postgraduate students and undergraduate students?
So was there any response from the VC?
No, he was given, apparently, I'm aware, he was given a certain deadline by COB of that 3 days later, I think, including the weekend. But there was no response.
So he was given a 3 days deadline, did not respond. Going forward, what do you expect then? You said there was a unanimous vote taken in relation to what?
To strike.
Both
unions want to strike. It's a unanimous vote to seek, what is it called? A strike ballot, a secret ballot.
Secret ballot.
So the Ministry of Labour moderates this. They come in and carry out the ballot process.
When will that happen?
I don't know at particular present. We haven't been given a date. They haven't been given a date.
But the members have shown they want a strike mandate to come out of this.
Yes.
unanimous vote in relation to what matters?
2, the mandate was quite clear. Reinstatement for me and removal of the Vice Chancellor.
So there's 2 issues that the 2 USP staff unions are looking at. One, that which they've voted for and they're waiting for Ministry of Employment. Reinstatement of you, Dr. Tamara, as in your former position where you were terminated, and removal of Vice Chancellor Pala Lualia. Up for negotiation if the Vice Chancellor wants to discuss?
Any strike ballot is up for negotiation, because if it's successful, if the voting is successful and a strike notice is given, then there will be negotiations.
I'm sure everybody watching tonight will be concerned, because we may be seeing just days away from the ballot being taken and the action proceeding further in relation to our regional university right here in Suva and around the Pacific region, where thousands of students go to university for further education. I want to state very clearly here, before the 2 former presidents make their final comments to you, to the people of Fiji. We had invited the USP Vice Chancellor, Professor Pala Lualia, but the university indicated that he will not attend as they do not comment in public on personnel issues. So we did give him that right to be at this table, but we needed to do this show to highlight issues of concern that need to be looked at by the USP. Your final comments, Dr. Tamara. You sit in a situation now, you have your contract has been terminated, you've been told that you did not follow what is in your contract or your breach of ordinances, and now you're trying to fight back through the legal processes that exist. What's your message to the people?
I think as people who either pay tax and therefore that tax goes into scholarships as citizens of this country, as parents who pay for school fees, who pay for the fees for their students, as concerned citizens of people who are potentially going to become employers and are worried about the quality of graduates that will come out of the university in the years to come. What goes on at the university is incredibly important. It's been said that the university is the employer of choice. In the region, it is also the regional university of choice. Graduates have some esteem, used to have some esteem. It's questionable about whether that particular image will persist. So as people who have some particular role to play, no matter how small, if it's just paying your taxpayers' dollars, you have a right to speak, or you have a right to talk, you have a right to have an opinion about what's going on at USP. I'll just end with basically a little story. The university teaches students one of the programs is psychology. All our psychology courses are now currently online, and the students have raised their concerns about this. They feel like they're not getting quality education because they are being taught in online courses. They lose out on that interaction between teacher and student. And the parents have now raised that concern to the Psychology Society of Fiji, and that's gone to council. I think that's just a small example of what is potentially something that the people of Fiji should be interested in. If you're a parent and your child is at USP, you should have something to say about what's happening at USP. If the staff are talking about leadership issues and there's clear decision-making problems, then you need to also speak out and talk about it as well.
Elizabeth.
Okay, the staff are 1,300 in number. They're voicing their concerns about the institution. That should raise the awareness of the public and US taxpayers. I concur with everything Tamara has said. You have 25,000 students out there, and it is through the staff taking these issues to council that the council, your regional reps out in the region, the members that come to council, are now more aware of what is going on. So it is in our interests and their interests to tackle these issues, hard that they may be. But as unionists, we stand with due process for justice. So in those two issues that are being brought up by the unions, if one is the removal of a leader with due process, looking at the situation, given what we've been through, looking at our reputation out there in the region, there are concerns and action needs to be taken. And I'm proud to say that the unions have stood together and have the concern of students at heart, the quality that they're getting in terms of education as a contributor. We are the most applauded institution of regional cooperation. We have produced over 50,000 graduates. We are graduates of that institution. So I think we're going through some rough times, but we look at and implore our council to take the action that is in the best interests of the institution.
And that's the two former presidents of the Association of the USP staff, Elizabeth Fong and Dr. Tamara Osborne-Naikatini. No doubt this won't be the only show on USP. We will continue to focus on the different issues that matter to you, the students, a lot of questions that had come through the parents, the stakeholders and other people, and in relation to the staff concerns as well. We will continue to try to get the USP Vice Chancellor as well in relation to the issues that have been raised, although it has been stated clearly by the university that anything dealing with personnel issues will be confidential and he will not make any comments. Until next week, have a great evening.